Welcome to a special edition of the Daily Report on Friday, February 13th. I'm Lindsay Reiser, live from the CBS Broadcast Center in New York. It is day 13 in the search for 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie. Tonight, we will devote the entire hour to her disappearance, and we answer your questions as federal authorities chase any and all leads that will bring her home.
We believe now, after we've processed that crime scene, that we do in fact have a crime scene, that we do in fact have a crime.
The Pima County Sheriff's Department in Arizona is calling on the public for help with finding Nancy Guthrie.
Everyone is looking for you, Mommy, everywhere. Your children will not rest until we are together again.
To anyone that may be involved, do the right thing. This is an 84-year-old grandma.
And our hearts and our prayers are with Savannah and her entire family.
Chilling new surveillance video captures the scene outside Nancy Guthrie's front door.
Authorities describe the masked figure as a male, approximately 5'9" or 5'10", with an average build.
We believe our mom is still out there. We need your help. Somehow, some way, she is feeling these prayers, and that God is lifting her even in this moment and in this darkest place.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. It is now day 13 in the search for Nancy Guthrie, the 84-year-old mother of Today Show anchor Savannah Guthrie. The FBI has now doubled their reward to $100,000 for any information relating to finding Nancy or to making an arrest in this case. And for the first time, they called this individual a suspect. The FBI describing him as about 5'9" or 5'10" with an average build. CBS News reporter Jonathan Vigliotti spoke with the Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos for the first time since last Wednesday about whether the suspect should be afraid tonight.
I think the suspect should be afraid every night. We're going to find you. We're going to find you.
Are you one step closer today than you were yesterday?
Closer. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Officials are asking anyone who might have information to call the sheriff's number on your screen or 1-800-CALL-FBI. And joining me right now tonight on the desk is Anna Schechter, our senior coordinating producer for our Crime and Public Safety Unit. Anna, you have been all over this. You will be with me as we interview law enforcement experts, and we're going to be posing your questions to those experts. Basically, people have been flooding our social media pages, and it's a lot of the same questions. So we have collected them, and that is what we're going to be trying to do tonight.
And hopefully we'll debunk some of the misinformation that's out there. And hopefully also programming like this will inform our viewers. So if anybody has seen something that could help solve this case, they can speak up and reach out to the FBI. We
know law enforcement is doing the typical shoestring level leather reporting and detective work that you have to do, but it could come down to that tip, to somebody out there knowing something. So let's go ahead and begin in Tucson, Arizona, where we find CBS News reporter Andres Gutierrez. So Andres, where do things stand right now?
Well, Lindsay, we're 13 days into the search, and investigators are simply grinding away. They're collecting evidence, they're testing that evidence, and they're still working to verify tips. In that interview with Jonathan Vigliotti, the sheriff said that they have received more than 30,000 calls since Nancy was reported missing. They have at least 400 members of law enforcement right now assigned to her case. Leads are being reviewed daily and assigned to teams that are made up of a sheriff deputy as well as an FBI agent. The sheriff did confirm that investigators have received some DNA test results back, but so far that testing has not identified a suspect. We know some of the physical characteristics, but we still do not have a name. Items recovered so far include those gloves that were found about 1.5 miles away from Nancy's house. They've been sent off to the lab for analysis, but we still haven't received those results back yet. Authorities are still asking the public here near Nancy's house in the Catalina foothills within a 2-mile radius to review their surveillance video. And even if it shows a part of a person or a vehicle, they want to see it. Between New Year's Day and February 2nd, the sheriff says that there have been no confirmed signs of life, but also no evidence that she is dead. And so it's giving them and Nancy's family some hope that she is out there. Some have dubbed the 84-year-old as America's grandma, and so the clock is still ticking to find her.
There have been reports of tension between local law enforcement and federal officials in this case. What have you learned about that?
There sure have been, Lindsay, and the sheriff ended up addressing those head-on with our Jonathan Vigliotti. He was asked whether his department was slowing down the investigation or outright refusing to turn over evidence to the FBI, and here's what the sheriff had to say.
Well, first of all, I think there's nothing further than the truth than our two agencies not working well together. That is not even close. I don't know where this report comes from. I understand that, at the ground level, everybody has pride in their agency. My deputies are very proud of their agencies and proud to be a deputy. FBI, a great agency, have a lot of pride. Sometimes there might be a difference of how we work this lead or that lead. But if you go back to our last press conference, 2 days into this, maybe 3 days, we are plugged in at the hip with the FBI.
And so the sheriff says this is not about a turf war. This is about using the right lab for the right job and to keep the process consistent. The physical evidence being handled by a lab that is out of state. The digital evidence, including those ransom notes that local outlets and TMZ got, those are being handled by the FBI. But again, the sheriff insisting that both agencies are working side by side.
Okay, Andres Gutierrez, thank you so much. We're on this investigation. Let's bring in Anna Schechter. So we mentioned that CBS News' Jonathan Vigliotti spoke to Sheriff Nanos. Let's play a little bit more of what he had to say.
We did get some DNA back, and we are looking at all those things.
Has it led to a name?
No. You mean a suspect?
Yeah.
Boy, I wish it did. Not yet.
What did you make of what we're hearing from the sheriff tonight?
Well, they had sent evidence to this lab in Florida, and they had actually found DNA, and they were getting some of these results back, but it did not point to a specific individual. And this is typical in cases like this. It doesn't work where you just send in a glove and then you get DNA and boom, there's a photo and an ID of a person. It doesn't work like that. And unfortunately, this is a typical case in this sense.
So in order to get a hit, what would the suspect had to have done in the past? Is it have a criminal record where the DNA is on file?
Potentially, or maybe even done 23andMe, and then there has to be coordination between the FBI and the company. So this is a process, and it takes time. And this also speaks a little bit to why this is taking so much time. But unfortunately, the testing that has been done at that lab so far has not yielded a really strong lead for investigators.
Is this sort of an indication that this information will be more helpful on the back end when the suspect is finally caught and putting those pieces together for a criminal prosecution?
Exactly right, Lindsay. Once they find the suspect, then they can match that individual's DNA. They'll have this person in custody. They'll take a follicle sample or a swab, a cheek swab, and then they can match that to the DNA found at the scene of the crime.
A lot of people keep saying, why is this taking so long? I think it's important to remind people of some recent manhunts that have been, that we have covered. Luigi Mangione, charged with the murder of United Healthcare CEO. Brian Kohberger, who killed the 4 University of Idaho students in 2022. Tyler Robinson, he has been charged with Charlie Kirk's murder. Maybe not this long. I think Kohberger was 6 weeks.
That's right. But during those 6 weeks, you had a lot of frustration. How is it possible that this is taking so long? And then something cracked this case wide open. And it's a lot of police work. So many resources have been thrown at this. Luigi Mangione, let's look at this example. It was luck. The fact that those people in that McDonald's saw him and said, wait a minute, something isn't right here, and they called 911. That is what cracked this case. Think if those people had not said something, we could have been looking at a totally different timeline for that case. So just for people to remember, it seems like the suspect has had a lot of luck on their side, and law enforcement not a lot of luck, but that could change.
Do you recall with Kohberger, was it the DNA that led them to him, or was it the DNA that solidified his prosecution?
Solidified, and remember, it was the cell phone pings that were important, and law enforcement is absolutely using that type of technology in this case right now.
Okay, Anna Schechter, thank you. Again, you're going to be with me all hour, but Nancy Guthrie was last seen the night of Saturday, January 31st. 13 days ago. Let's bring you caught up to speed on the timeline once again. She had dinner at her daughter Annie's house that night. Her son-in-law drove her home, and the next day she was reported missing. On Monday, February 2nd, the Pima County Sheriff held his first press conference and declared the house to be a crime scene. Later that night, the sheriff and local TV stations received an apparent ransom note that authorities are taking seriously. That note included a monetary demand and a 5 p.m. deadline for that Thursday. On Wednesday, the Guthrie children posted their first video on Instagram pleading for their mother's safe return. As the search became more desperate, the Guthrie family posted another video on Saturday the 7th telling their mother's possible kidnapper they are willing to pay money for the return of their mom. On Tuesday, investigators announced a major development, those new images from surveillance video the morning Nancy Guthrie disappeared. And search efforts accelerated from there. Overnight Tuesday, authorities detained but later released a potential person of interest. On Wednesday, they found a pair of black gloves near the home. And on Thursday, the FBI doubled that reward and described the suspect as a male with an average build and a height of about 5'9" to 5'10". So, Anna, let's go ahead and bring you a few more questions. A number of viewers had questions about the surveillance footage. One asked, why did it take them so long to get this out?
This is a really great question, and a lot of people have been asking me the same thing. Why did it take a week for this doorbell camera to go out? Well, it was deleted, actually. It was Nancy Guthrie had a Nest camera. Nest is owned by Google, and she did not pay for a subscription. And so every few hours, whatever the camera captured, and especially it records when it detects movement, was taped over. And so essentially, it's like on a computer, you delete a file, but it is still backed up. There's still data. It's just the file has been deleted. And so that data went up into a cloud. And thankfully, you had Google engineers work on that to essentially retrieve that from the cloud, reconstruct it, and then share that with the FBI. And our understanding is that the Google engineers worked on that and then provided this restored video to the FBI. And then they had to go through, and they knew they had some timestamps to look for that helped them narrow the search. But still, that takes a lot of hours of searching through the terabytes of video to find exactly what they wanted.
So that leads to the next question from a viewer. Is there footage of her being taken away?
That is a great question. Our reporting indicates that we don't know if there is, and there might not be footage of her being taken out of the house.
Real quick, what was the tie to the person of interest? This guy named Carlos of Rio Rico, who's no longer considered a person of interest.
So Carlos, who we spoke to, had been in the vicinity, and we were talking earlier about cell phone tower pings. So law enforcement knew that he had been in the Tucson area and even not too far away, and they were using that to try to track. There are a number of ways. They can look at vehicles, but remember, it was so dark that a license plate reader camera, even half a mile away, they were trying to lean on that, but it was really dark. And those it doesn't always pick up that, oh, that's the car. It's really tough. So we know he was in Tucson, but he was cleared.
Okay. Officials are asking anyone who might have information to call the sheriff's number that we are going to put up on your screen, 1-800-CALL-FBI. We're going to answer more of your questions about the case.
Horrible, unnerving, disheartening. What a stain on Tucson. It's awful. Anyway. Awful. I hope that they find her quickly and she's healthy.
It's a very quiet neighborhood. It's a very safe neighborhood. This is highly unusual, and obviously we're very concerned about her. I mean, this is terrible.
It's like something in a movie. It just doesn't seem real. It doesn't seem like it's right here in our neighborhood. It's the talk of the community for sure, and it's just so shocking and so eerie and just doesn't fit.
Those were some of the people from the Catalina Foothills community near Tucson reacting to Nancy Guthrie's shocking disappearance. And Guthrie's children have asked for prayers and for anyone who sees anything unusual, even if you're not in or around Tucson, to reach out to law enforcement. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nando says collectively the sheriff and FBI have gotten more than 30,000 calls in 13 days. Lance Leisling joins us now. He served as an FBI supervisory special agent for more than 20 years and is a former prosecutor. More recently, he served as the supervisor for the FBI's Phoenix Desert Hawk Violent Crimes Task Force. Lance, thank you so much for being here. What is your take on where things stand now?
You know, I would qualify all of this by we probably know about 5% of what the investigators know.
5%.
We know what's being played out in public. We know the searches that are overt. We know what's been said at the press conferences, but there are multiple avenues investigators are going after, proactive and reactive. Reacting to tips, but also proactive avenues with technology and other devices. But really, the big break in this case, what invigorated this case, is the surveillance images. They came out recently, and not only are the items in those images so a waterfall of tips and leads to proactively go after, but it's the behavior, that mannerisms in there that also give the investigators some glimpse into why this crime was committed.
And Lance, a lot of viewers have raised questions about why it took so long for video of the suspect to be released. What is the procedure for that?
Yeah, the procedure is very quick. Really, in my experience, it was often my decision. I would talk with our media coordinator in the office that would provide advice. It's an expert on dealing with the media. Why are we releasing the video images? And really, the factors we used was, would it help the case? Would these images help the case? There was always something, though, that we would leave out of the media. And it wasn't because we were trying to hide anything. It was simply because we needed some way to validate tips that were coming in. So it might be a scar or a tattoo in a certain place or something, maybe something we would leave out, so that when we got tips and we'd ask people about the subject and we knew that only we knew about this certain item, then we could validate that tip. If that suspect had that item, we knew it was a priority tip.
Lance, you're in Phoenix. I'm from the Phoenix area. Does the proximity to Mexico change the investigation? I mean, would the FBI be in contact with Mexican authorities to be on the lookout? Would technology that we have access to in the U.S. be available for authorities there?
Yeah, sometimes. So living in Arizona or any border state, you're always concerned about that. And if there were immediate indications of a cross-border kidnapping, time is of the essence. You're getting a be on the lookout warning, a BOLO out to all ports of entry. Border Patrol is going to be looking for the suspect and vehicles. We didn't have that in this case. There was no immediate indication of cross-border. But I guarantee what we have now is FBI and deputies going to Border Patrol and looking at all the data at those ports of entry from the time it would have taken to drive from Nancy's house to those ports of entry. And then more importantly, you're getting international tips, I am sure. FBI has offices in Mexico and many other countries. They're using their diplomatic skills, their relationships with the FBI's equivalent in those countries to track those evidence down, cover those leads in Mexico, and then get the information back to the investigators.
Lance Lysing, we really have appreciated your expertise in talking to you. Thank you so much.
So let's get to more viewer questions.
Yeah, okay, so let's go to this one that I saw a lot of. Two kind of variations I'm going to read to you. One is, do they check stores where that backpack is sold, that 25-liter Ozark Trek backpack? And then another person, Carson Wolf, posted, who was the last one to order a ski mask off Amazon in that area? Is that something investigators can find out?
These are great questions, and they absolutely are. So the Ozark Trail Hiker backpack, that is made by Walmart. And so we actually reached out to Walmart. They declined to comment, but we know that investigators are looking at that. They're talking to these brands, right? And a Walmart, a big corporation, and they're going to track online purchases. They're going to track in-store purchases in the area. That is absolutely part of this investigation, and they devote a lot of resources to just this. As soon as they got that video, they were figuring out what he was wearing, what kind of backpack, and they were right out of the gate.
To me, felt like a little bit long before they got that description out. We got the video, and then it was like 24 hours until we got the exact make and model of the backpack. Maybe it's just because I'm of like the TikTok attention span.
Well, I would say that the FBI had figured out the make of the clothing
well before they put it out.
Yeah.
And then do they look for like bulk purchases, like someone who bought the backpack and the ski mask? Because to me, just the backpack would be kind of a needle in the haystack.
And look, they're also looking, did this person go to a store and buy all the purchases at once? I mean, that would be the best for them. And that line of inquiry is underway, and that you can be sure that they're going to these stores in this area that sell that type of product.
We have two different questions. I'm going to combine them. One viewer asked, how do they know it's a man? And another viewer asked, what about the shoes and prints?
Great question. We haven't heard, I'll take the last part first. Yeah. We haven't heard about a footprint or a tire mark in the road. And it's unclear to me if the FBI has that and they're just not putting it out there, or if they don't have that. Now, those sneakers perhaps it just didn't leave a mark clear enough. But that is absolutely something that the detectives that secure that crime scene would have been looking for, and they might even have it, and we're just not hearing about it yet. Let's hope that's the case. And in terms of
how do they know it's a man?
How do they know it's a man? Good question. They're analyzing the build, the height, and the FBI has experts that do exactly this. This is their job. They are professionals at this, and they've determined that, and that's who was involved in putting out that information.
Okay. All right. Again, officials are asking anyone with information to call the sheriff's number on your screen or 1-800-CALL-FBI. Welcome back to a special edition of the Daily Report. Authorities are asking neighbors within a 2-mile radius from Nancy Guthrie's home for any surveillance video taken close to the time of her disappearance. Cybersecurity expert Alex Stamos joins us now. He's the chief product officer at artificial intelligence security startup Corridor. He's also the former chief security officer at Facebook, where he built the company's first counterterrorism capability. He also founded the Stanford Internet Observatory to conduct research on AI and child safety. Thank you so much for being here. So let's get into it. Nancy had this free Google Nest plan, so the video should have been deleted within 3 to 6 hours, long after Guthrie was reported missing. People have raised privacy concerns about the way this video was resurrected, if you will. How did this work, and is this a special circumstance?
Yeah, so as we know, Nest is constantly sending video to Google. We heard that they will hold it for at least 3 to 6 hours. So that means that that video is constantly being sent to Google, is being stored on their servers, and then deleted, and probably not available under normal circumstances to Nest and Nest's law enforcement response team. In this case, they were able to go and find the video after looking for it with a really deep search. What I expect happened here is that Nest is using Google storage mechanisms, either Google Cloud or the equivalent internal mechanisms. And they had set up a mechanism to make sure that files that are deleted that were able to be recovered within something like 14 to 30 days. This is really common inside of large companies, just in case a mistake is made by software. And it probably required a real special search by Google engineers. This is not something I expect Google wants to do in every case, and require them to really deeply look into the internals of how their storage systems work. But it is really common in these big distributed file systems that stuff will last for a while after it's supposed to be deleted.
And Alex, we got a question from a YouTube user. They said, how is it even possible to not find a person for 12 days when we have cameras on every block and on every house?
Yeah, it is kind of amazing. I mean, it's true. We've got Ring cameras, Nest cameras, all kinds of cameras all over the place. We've heard a couple things. One, this isn't the densest neighborhood, right? We're not talking about lower Manhattan here, where we'd probably within hours have the FBI would have been able to track the car exactly where it's gone. I am a little surprised, to be honest, that it is a nice neighborhood, right? These are it looks like $1 million houses. So you would have thought we would have had more surveillance footage. They're probably pulling a bunch of data, right? So you've got the cameras. You also have what are called tower dumps, right? So they'll be pulling the information on all the cell phones that were in the area at the time, and then they'll be filtering out the phones that are there all the time. That would be residents and people that visit a lot and looking for folks who are not normally there. They'll be pulling with geofence warrants, so they'll be looking for IP addresses and accounts that were sending geolocation data, and again, filtering for folks who are not normal residents. So there's usually a huge amount of data that can be pulled, and it is surprising that, considering the amount of data that people leave behind in the modern world, between all of that, automatic license plate readers and such, that we have not been able to find these folks. And so that either indicates that this not very dense suburban neighborhood just happens to have had a sparsity of cameras, or people not willing to share the data, or that these people were better prepared to cover their tracks than we expected.
Excuse me, Alex Stamos, thank you so much. Officials are asking anyone who might have information to call the sheriff's number on your screen or 1-800-CALL-FBI. Welcome back to a special edition of the Daily Report Search for Nancy Guthrie. CBS News senior coordinating producer for our crime and public safety unit, Anna Schechter, is with me this hour as we examine every question you have with reporters, law enforcement experts, security experts. We're answering your questions. And we know the FBI has doubled the reward for any information leading to the 84-year-old mother of Today Show co-host Savannah Guthrie or an arrest in the case. Let's bring in Brianna Whitney. She is a true crime correspondent for 3 TV and CBS 5 in Arizona. She's also the host of the True Crime Arizona podcast and has been closely following the developments in this case. Brianna, you've been going down to Tucson. You've been interviewing Sheriff Nanos. What is the latest on what you have to report today?
Yeah, so I just interviewed Sheriff Nanos not too long ago. I think one of the items of note is that he is saying that the Guthrie family is not cleared as of now, and that nobody is cleared. He even went as far to say that the man that they detained and released the other night is also not officially cleared. So it seems that they really have not made a lot of progress in terms of ruling people out. I also asked him about the whole controversy between where the DNA is being tested. He says that he is working in tandem with the FBI, that there is not tension. But I did ask him, he had told me that the rapid DNA testing was broken in Tucson last week. That's why they used a Phoenix lab earlier. And I asked him if that had been fixed, because obviously in this case, rapid DNA testing is a huge investigative tool and lead when you're trying to at least get to the lab next. And he said he wasn't sure if that was fixed yet. So definitely still some clarification that needs to be had in the investigation.
And how are authorities treating this versus other cases, Brianna?
I think they want to treat this the same as other cases, but the reality is it is not the same as other cases. This is one of the most unusual, most bizarre, and quite frankly, most heartbreaking cases because there's so much mystery here. And I think that's what has people kind of hanging on every little update. But I think where they're struggling is that they're not used to putting out updates all the time. And so when you have the public that wants things in real time, 24/7, it seems that they're holding more to the vest and not being as, approachable, maybe available to the media as they might be in an investigation. But I think the other kind of part to that is that the sheriff's department did what they needed to do, and then they processed that scene, and then they cleared the scene at Nancy Guthrie's home. And now you have the FBI who's saying, yeah, we got to go back in here and look at these things again. And unfortunately, because there isn't crime tape up there, you've had people who have been up and down that driveway near the home, potentially contaminating the scene. So I think they need to adjust a bit. The FBI trying to do what they can now on this side of things. But the reality is it just is not a typical case in the least.
I also think we are insatiable for every little detail and update in this case. Like a car moves an inch and it becomes a new headline, and the area has just been surrounded with true crime influencers and bloggers, and they don't necessarily have the same rigorous journalistic standards that legacy media does, that AZ Family does, or CBS News does. And how is that sort of contributing to not only the spectacle, but is it also influencing law enforcement's work?
I think so, for sure. I would say 100% on that. It's really influencing how everybody's functioning, even the journalists, because you have people who are putting out every little movement, every tiny detail, and the problem, it's good in that people are paying attention, the public, but the problem is that when you have these platforms like TikTok and Instagram and Twitter, where people are just posting things in real time without potentially vetting what they're doing, because these somewhat bloggers don't have the same kind of ethics that they have to go through, or certain even legalities that they have to go through. The public wants that, though, and they seem to want every little piece of video and movement in this case, which is, completely unusual for a case like that. It's forcing the journalists to also then ask the sheriff's department and the FBI constantly about every little movement. And I honestly think they've been frustrated by that, the agencies, because they're like, look, we don't typically talk about every little search or deputies out here asking questions. That's just part of every investigation that we ever do. And so that's really changed the game on this. But when you have these platforms, these video platforms where people are consuming clips at a rapid fire pace, it can be really hard to keep up with. And I think that's something that everybody's been struggling with. But when you're in the spotlight as the lead agency on this, Pima County Sheriff's Department and the FBI, you have even more scrutiny over it.
Really important perspective. Brianna Whitney, thank you so much. And you can listen to Brianna's True Crime Arizona podcast wherever you get your podcasts. An apparent ransom note relating to the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie demanded payment in the cryptocurrency Bitcoin. Now, this case has reignited questions over how difficult that can be to trace. So joining us now is Eric O'Neill. He's a former FBI counterintelligence operative. He's also author of the book Spies, Lies, and Cybercrime, Cybersecurity Tactics to Outsmart Hackers and disarm scammers. Eric, can you first explain what make cryptocurrency and Bitcoin particularly unique and potentially appealing to people who might not have the best intentions?
Certainly. Well, look, first of all, cryptocurrency drives cybercrime. It's the way that cybercriminals get paid. It's the way that they hide that money from law enforcement. And there is a great cat and mouse game on the dark web to try to hunt that cybercrime. Now, the misconception is that cryptocurrency is anonymous. It's not. In fact, it goes the other way. Cryptocurrency is all part of a public ledger on something called the blockchain. Think of it like a huge vault with infinite number of lockboxes. And you can buy cryptocurrency and it goes into your lockbox and only you have the keys. And if you send cryptocurrency to someone else, it just moves from your lockbox to their lockbox on the ledger and you give them that key. So to say we're going to put Bitcoin in that wallet would be a misstatement. And what they're hoping is that they get that cryptocurrency. They'll own the Bitcoin. And what that means is that the FBI can watch every transaction that hits that wallet and then where that cryptocurrency moves.
But Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, our name isn't on the lockbox.
Right. There is no name on the lockbox. It's in a public ledger without a name. So what the FBI has to do is follow the cryptocurrency. What'll happen is they'll put it in that wallet, and then the criminals, if they're wise and smart, will try to move it. And what they do is try to launder that money through what's called mixers on the dark web that put a lot of different cryptocurrency in one box, in one wallet, and then spread it out to different places.
Oh my gosh.
The FBI, though, is very adept at following that money. And what they do is they follow the transaction by transaction by transaction using a tool that we call chain analysis. We do that with my company, NexaSure. And when you follow it until it finally goes to a regulated entity like a bank or a entity like Coinbase, because at some point the bad guys have to turn that cryptocurrency into money, otherwise they can't spend it. And it's at that point that the FBI can hopefully freeze the cryptocurrency, determine who owns that final wallet that is connected to a regulated bank, and then have an identity of a cyber criminal or one of their associates.
And Eric, a man was arrested for allegedly sending an imposter random demand to the Guthrie family. So how common are fraud attempts like this, demanding payment in Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies?
They're very common. It's an incredibly common scam. Cyber criminals launch these scams throughout the year, usually around holidays. I mean, we're right near Valentine's Day right now. Romance scams and Valentine's Day scams are a huge thing. And I'm not surprised that this was one of probably the most public scams to try to get the family to send cryptocurrency. I'm sure there's other. And of course, we're also questioning whether the ransom notes, the original ransom notes that were sent to TMZ and other local stations are actually the kidnappers or yet another scam.
Eric O'Neill, fascinating. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
All right, let's go back to our viewer questions, Anna. So I'm going to go ahead and go to viewer question number 2. Why haven't they paid the ransom?
Well, the FBI has been working with the Guthrie family, so they had a strategy in place. They responded to the ransom note, and then they didn't get a response back, which is why the family put out the video of Savannah in between her 2 siblings, trying to establish that line of communication so that they could negotiate. So without any line of communication, to put money in it is a big risk. Now, in hindsight, maybe they could have put a little bit to see if that cryptocurrency would move, just like Eric was explaining, so that the FBI could follow it. But they had a strategy in place and they stuck to it. And so far that we know of, there's no money that's gone into that Bitcoin wallet.
Do we have time for one more question in this segment? All right, let's go to viewer question 3. Why isn't the family putting up a $1 million reward?
It's an interesting question. I guess a lot of people want to know about the family, but they have a strategy. If the FBI had thought that that was a great idea, they probably would have suggested that to the family.
Yeah, I'm sure the family is literally sitting there thinking, we will do literally anything, we will try anything, but the FBI probably has to stop them from doing everything. I mean, because there has to be a step-by-step. They're the ones that have experience with this, as unusual as this case is.
And they want to be strategic. They don't want to be haphazardly just throwing strategies around. They came up with a plan, and they've really stuck to it. They've been very disciplined, and the FBI wants them to. Sometimes when the family goes out and does something on their own because they get frustrated or they panic and they want to just put a PSA out, that can hinder the investigation. Of course, we're nowhere, we don't know the idea of the suspect 13 days out, so maybe something might have helped, but hindsight's 20/20, and they're sticking to their strategy.
But I mean, as Lance said earlier, we probably know about 5% of what is going on, so
absolutely. They are running down a lot of leads, and they're not sharing the vast majority of that information.
Okay, take a look at the number on your screen. Officials are asking anyone with information to call the sheriff's number you see there, or 1-800-CALL-FBI. Someone who has experience with hostage negotiations is former FBI Special Agent Chip Massey. Chip served with the agency for more than 20 years. During his time with the FBI, he led several high-profile criminal cases dealing with kidnappings and hostage situations at a local and international level. Chip was also a member of the FBI's New York Public Corruption Squad, and he conducted counterterrorism interviews in the immediate aftermath of the September 11th attacks. He is now CEO of Convincing Company. So, Chip, from your experience working with hostage cases, can you tell us what is happening behind the scenes? Because I know for us, for a lot of people watching, there has been sort of this vacuum of information. Everybody wants to know what's happening. They want every little dribble and detail. But there probably is a lot happening behind the scenes that we're not privy to.
Oh, sure, right? And that's on purpose, you're right? And it would be an overflow of information. When investigators, especially the FBI, working in tandem with the local law enforcement, I mean, it is like an on-scene army present. There are so many moving parts, and there are thousands of people working this investigation. So they're going to separate out according to the components. So you're going to have for us in the FBI, we have a critical incident response group that travels together wherever there is this kind of crisis event. Something of this magnitude would call for that. So you're going to have the hostage negotiators. You're going to have SWAT there, the hostage rescue team. You're going to have evidence recovery people. You're going to have tech specialists. It just goes on and on about the people there. Behind the scenes, and I think what is probably on most people's minds is how is the family interacting with these groups? And especially from my experience is the hostage negotiation team. There is so much that's being done behind the scenes of talking to them, getting their pulse for things, and checking for also pieces of information that we might be missing.
And what do you make of the strategy that the FBI and the Guthrie family used in their social media posts, what they were wearing, how they were seated together, and then changing that strategy? What do you make of all that?
Yeah, so excellent question, guys. So as we started this and we saw that first video that Savannah puts out, and you see how close they are in that
physically touching.
Right. Again, showing family unity, showing family together. And now what they're echoing is this is somebody that's missing from our family. And she starts that conversation with, we're ready to talk. And that's exactly what I would want her to say. And then she goes in through and then humanizing Nancy to them, right? This is our mommy. This is somebody that is a key component of our family.
Talk to her and you'll see how wise she is.
Exactly. She's funny. She's spunky. You know, get to know her. Why? We don't want her to just be seen as a lottery ticket to these people. This is a human being. This is our mother. Please take care of her. You know, and I know you're going to like her. Create that bond. That's what we absolutely want and will drive for all day.
And we want to reiterate, officials are asking anyone who might have information to call the sheriff's number on your screen, 1-800-CALL-FBI. Our thanks to Chip Massey. Federal authorities are offering a $100,000 reward for any information leading to an arrest of the possible kidnapper or something that would lead to Nancy Guthrie's location. Let's bring in Herman Weisberg. He's a former New York City police detective with more than 2 decades of experience in law enforcement. He's now turned his focus to private investigations as the managing director of the SAGE Intelligence Group. Thank you so much for being here, Herman. How does this case compare with the other kinds of kidnapping cases you've seen in your career?
Oh, this is a very rare crime to see in the United States. I've dealt with international kidnappings in Asia and Mexico, and most kidnappings are familial and related to parental kidnappings. But this is a extremely complex and extremely rare crime, and in my opinion, one of the worst crimes you could try to pull off.
We got a lot of viewer questions like this. Who picks up grass to cover a ring cam? Does that behavior speak to the suspect's experience?
It really does. You know, you're looking at somebody who really had a very bad idea and had this notion that he could pull off something. My team works, I have a couple of former Navy SEALs, for example, that have done abductions of terrorists and things like that. It takes an entire lifetime to train for this, and months of rehearsals and tactical, run-throughs. This person thought putting on a ski mask and having what it looks like possibly could be a gun and a holster that comes out of like a children's toy box, and trying to cover up a ring camera. Kidnappings require a lot of recon, a lot of surveillance, a lot of preparation. Whoever this was did not do any of these things, and it shows. It's this is not an experienced criminal, or not somebody with that put a lot of thought into this, in my opinion.
But Herman, a lot of people asked, he may be an amateur, but he still hasn't been caught.
That's part of the problem. This runs both ways. I think law enforcement, I know I would much rather deal with a professional criminal than an amateur in this situation. My hope is that because he's not a hardened criminal, possibly he'll have some empathy and finally, hopefully, just turn himself in. I think would be a great outcome, and get Mrs. Guthrie to a hospital and back to her family. This is not a professional. I think things went wrong for him from the beginning, and I think it's starting to show now. I can only hope that he comes to his senses and surrenders himself. I think he could, at this time, he could probably garner a little bit of sympathy from society.
Hey, Herman, I got to be quick with you. I got 30 seconds left, but another question that keeps coming up is, we don't know how this person got into the home. Why would law enforcement keep that close to their vest?
I really can't see any advantage or benefit to anybody to going through all of the information. They're still hoping that there's a reach out from this party, parties, and they're hoping that they can the information they're holding back can help identify and make sure that he's an actual actor here. There'll be plenty of time, CBS 48 Hours and Peter Van Zandt will go through all of these details for decades to come with this crime. But right now is not the time to share information. It's the time to help and bring this to an end, and hopefully get Mrs. Guthrie back to her family.
Herman Weisberg, thank you so much. Anna, your final thoughts.
Well, based on what Herman was saying, the reconnaissance element, I think that is going to be key. And we know that police are asking neighbors in specific windows. They've broadened it now to look for ring cam or surveillance cam video over the course of a month. But there have been reports of suspicious vehicles. We don't know if police were able to totally run those down. But I suspect that a vehicle will be identified eventually, and that is going to help solve this crime.
Once again, officials are asking anyone with information, please call the number on your screen or 1-800-CALL-FBI.